Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, hi and welcome everyone. And welcome Pedro to this session. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, nice to see you, Fredrik.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. I think I was just telling you earlier, we're just came back from a walk. Yeah, so I'm feeling like very fresh, ready to talk.
Was it more of a hike or what kind of walk was it?
It's a short 15 minutes walk, like over town. It's a sunny day here in Porto. It's about to get very warm. Yeah, so like before I start my day, I just like go for a quick walk, get some fresh air, get the blood flowing, then I'm ready to back and work. As opposed to just waking up, I work remotely. I open my PC and I feel like every time I do that, I just get stressed throughout the day, and yeah, that's not very healthy.
Is it even more stressful summertime maybe as well?
I don't think so. It's actually the opposite. Summer is usually very chill, and the fresh air is way it's way better to be outside in the summer than in the winter. Yeah, my problem is really with the winter. You don't get to go outside if it's raining, if it's cloudy.
Yeah. I mean, I live in Sweden, and the winter time in the west coast of Sweden is you stay inside most of the time. I have 3 kids, so we need to stay active as well.
Yeah.
So that's great, and happy to have all of you here that have joined this session. Hopefully you will gain lots of practical insight from this session. Pedro is working for a remote first company, so we will focus quite a lot on that side of things, but I think that we will touch on quite many things. We have about 45 minutes in total to I guess it will be quite an intense session. I would be super happy if you, like the audience, if you introduce yourself. You can also let us know your current challenge and situation, because we want to bring in as many questions as possible. So I will just raise them to Pedro when I think it's relevant. So you can feel that this is more of a discussion and not only just a presentation. So happy to have all of you here. This is actually our 4th HiCareer live sessions. We have been speaking to a couple of amazing persons around, 2 recruiters, and last time we had Saya talking about how to move to Sweden, immigration policies, and this kind of stuff. You can find that on our YouTube channel currently, so you can like and subscribe that. My colleague actually told me that I need to tell the audience that they need to like and subscribe things. I'm not so promotional of myself, but there you go.
Same. I'm also not very good at.
Yeah.
I always there's a lot of recruiters, just putting out great content out there. I always feel like maybe I should, but I'm also very much focused on my work, on the day-to-day business. And I'm my work is my priority. So I'm also guilty of not doing the best work to promote myself.
I mean, contributing is much funnier, but maybe if you contribute to a larger audience, it's quite a good thing, I guess. So, yeah. And we will also talk a bit more about how you as a candidate should promote yourself and showcase your value. So, I mean, it's still a very relevant thing. So, and this is our last session before summertime. Guest session. I will probably host a couple of live streams this summer, but I will do it solo, actually. But let's jump right into the show now. And Pedro, I'm super happy to have you here. I'm super interested to hear about who you are and what you do. So feel free to just introduce yourself.
All right, my name is Pedro. I'm from Porto, Portugal. I'm a recruiter right now. I'm a talent and essentially a talent and people partner for this company called Mimica. We'll get the chance to talk more about Mimica. I think we have a few slides here just ready. I've not always been a recruiter. We can go there. I've actually started my career more in general consulting and marketing, and then I kind of pivot to HR and recruitment. But essentially, right now my focus is hiring, the best talent in the world for Mimica. That's really my priority. Is really, getting on the market, our company scaling, understanding hey, where is the best talent out there. We receive a lot of applications. We get to interview and meet a lot of great candidates. Oftentimes we have to make some hard choices between candidates as well. Pretty much like the only person hiring for tech at Mimica, pretty much responsible for all things hiring on the engineering side. We have a few colleagues more on the we have a colleague on the sales side and operations. But pretty much I'm part of like this very small team. We need to optimize as much as we can. And part of my day-to-day is like just making sure like, hey, is everything running smoothly as it can possibly be? Am I like just being optimal in every single one of my decisions? I've been working primarily in startups for the last 3-4 years now. A lot of them based in Germany. Basically, my focus has been very much Berlin and London. Working very much remotely and like hiring for remote companies pretty much most of the time. So hope we can get to talk about all of that.
Amazing. And have you still been living in Porto while working for German companies? And so on?
That's the case. Yeah, I think it's really the beauty of working remotely. Like you can really work for the best companies in the world from like different countries. Oftentimes, like this didn't used to be the case like 5-10 years ago. You'll have to move to London to work like maybe with a really growing company. A lot of people move to the US, like to Germany. No, I think like things are more distributed. You get to plan your life, your career and your personal life. There's a better balance out there on how you're planning those. And it's really great.
And as you mentioned, you have kids at home as well. So I guess that moving with the whole package might be a bit tricky.
Yeah, I don't actually have kids. Okay, yeah,
you don't have kids?
No, just one partner.
That's enough. Yeah,
we will have those. Yeah.
Get it. And just like my last question before jumping into you have a short presentation to share to us as well. How did you land your last job? I mean, it's a remote job and you landed it, obviously. So
yeah, so this will probably speak to some of the things like we'll cover in this session. But I applied. Okay, there's more to it. Okay, like we'll go into it as to what I was focusing over the last few years in my career, how I shape up my CV, how did I presented myself. But I applied like everybody else. I didn't had referrals. I didn't know anyone in the company at the time. It was pretty much like an opportunity that I found on LinkedIn. I found the company really cool. I had a chance to research it. I did adapt my CV, like I'm just focusing on what of my experience was relevant for this company, which I didn't know much at the time, which was Mimica. And from there, like the process was very smooth. So I don't have any backdoor secrets, like ready to share. I think it was very much a case of luck meets preparation in many ways.
So just preparing for each stage and trying to like showcase yourself in the best way, be relevant based on what they're looking for. So, but we're going there. So let me bring up the presentation. So you did a short already. So
already covered. Maybe just some logos of companies that I've worked with. I've worked with Wolt, like most notoriously very big in Sweden, Germany, the Nordic countries. Essentially, that was also like pretty much one of the where I grew more as a talent. Really, Wolt is a very fast-paced company. They were growing quite a lot during my time there. Essentially, like you get to learn like from the best talent in the industry. And it was like an amazing chance, like just be a part of like this very big, very well structured machine. Okay, there's definitely like always things to improve here and there. This has always been startups. Okay, like there's always friction in startups, but that's also a bit about the beauty of it. Is like and probably like why I enjoy it the most is like you get to build stuff. Things are not very defined. If you find you're always trying to solve business problems in the end of the day, and you get to be creative, you get to implement your solution, and you get to be like rewarded for it, and engage in a lot of discussions on it. Yeah, so that was a pretty cool time. I'm happy to share more about it as well.
Nice. I have a quick question, because you've been at some different companies. Wolt is founded in Finland, Mimica, London. You work for some German companies. Even if you have had like a remote first position, would you say that you can really feel the cultural differences based on where these companies are founded?
Oh, definitely. I think Linus may have spoken about this, like in one of your last sessions. There's a lot of communication differences between in some of these countries. If you like, for Mimica, like we're hiring a bit like for not from all continents, but mainly Americas and Europe, EMEA to some degree. The culture in the US is very different than, let's say, like Europe in many ways. Not so much like maybe more so like if you consider like functional areas, but just in itself, the US style communication is very direct, very straightforward, very fast. Time is money, essentially, like in personified. We need to be really optimal in the ways that, like, hey, we're selling, like we're talking, we're discussing, we're pitching issues. Yeah. If you're working with a German company, there's a bit of that in the sense, like, hey, Germans really expect you to be concise and straight to the point, but what matters most to them is efficiency. Like, just to give you like a very quick cultural difference between, let's say, hiring like, or let's say like the Southern European countries and let's say hiring in Germany. You go into a meeting like with like a German team. In 30 seconds, it's like, hey, how are you? How are things going? Fine. Let's get to business. This is what I need from you. In the south of Europe, it's very common, like, hey, you spend 5 minutes chit-chatting about everything that's been going on throughout your day, and then we get to work. Okay, so different expectations, like on how we conduct ourselves, the level of details that sometimes we go into, the ways we build relationships, and like we're hiring people, like we're building relationships all the time. Sometimes for the teams that we're hiring, sometimes with the candidates themselves. We often have to adapt, and in my case, I often have to adapt to the cultural style and expectations that team in particular is looking for. In Germany, like I was like, hey, there was a call that took 30 minutes, 45 minutes. The call needed to start, like on time. It needed to finish on time. Anything, beyond this, like we really need to make like a strong case that this is needed. And oftentimes in other cultures, it's very much okay to let meetings run out of time. Oftentimes they're more forgiving in the sense of like it's okay if people join one minute or two late. Everybody's kind of like maybe throughout their day-to-day. This will vary from country to country. It will vary from company to company. Wolt, yeah,
sure.
Yeah, definitely. Wolt. In the case with Wolt, like I was working primarily with the German market. Okay, so that's why I'm speaking a lot about Germany. But even the Wolt, maybe as an edge case in itself, we were hiring very much like an international team. So it's not like we're indexing a lot on just like on nationality or cultural in any ways. We were very much focusing on like, hey, talent, what can you bring to the table? Are you fun to work with? Like, are you passionate about what we do? Those were the main variables that we look for. As a result, we end up having like this really amazing culture of people who are naturally diverse, naturally very somehow flexible with each other, but really holding each other accountable for just being good performers, getting job done.
So if I get what you say right, it seems like you were focusing quite a lot on the core things, like the core values, the core competencies, and
Definitely.
Then it was very acceptant based on like different cultural traits. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. I think like you had like an somehow accurate take. Not that like we would very much like do cultural checks and saying like, hey, this person is X or Y. Most often, like we knew what we were looking for. Like Wolt has a culture to begin with, and that culture is pretty much like the product of a lot of the people that have contributed to it. It started very much as a Finnish company, as you said. It grew up to other countries. Naturally, because of like just the differences that we were discussing like earlier, we like a good and kind culture to some degree naturally emerged that was very much prioritizing like getting the job done, but do so kindly. If I think that will be like a good way to put it. What we were looking for, like in actual roles, naturally it will depend on the role, seniority, and so on. But culture was always there. We were looking for people who can feed this culture, and I want to say like match it, but also be able to elevate the team in a way. Like one of actually like the internal slogans that we had like for the team is like, hey, we want to hire people that are better than us, and like that have something to add. So like this, I think like what spoke most like to about the company's culture, and like how we were doing hiring back then.
Get it? Yeah, I have 50 questions popping up in my head, but I will actually let's move on a bit, and I will let you tell the audience a bit more about Mimica, and yeah, also we got a question here from CSR, and yeah, we will come back to that.
Okay. Yeah, so let's talk first about Mimica. Essentially, Mimica is a startup. Okay, like that's like the first things I like to share about us. We are a growing company. Currently, Series A. We're about to finalize like our next funding round, so like that might change sometime soon. Essentially, like the elevator pitch for Mimica is that our founders first came together with this idea of like, hey, we want to automate boring tasks. I'm sure like if you've been a high performer, if you're like in the tech industry, this thought has come to your mind at some point. Okay, so the idea is when they actually started, or like our history is like when they actually started looking to the market, they found like a very much strong niche that they can essentially implement and develop this technology. And that niche is with enterprise clients. Okay, essentially what we're doing today is in many ways building an end-to-end automation suite for enterprise companies, with a perspective, of course, growing outside of this. How we came to define our mission is like really, empower individuals to reclaim their most precious resource, time. Okay, and I think this is what we were talking about earlier, right? Before this call, is
Quick question.
what you do with your time matters. Yeah.
What roles are you competing against? It seems like as you're automating like different tasks in a business, what kind of roles would you say might disappear because of you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, like that's a very human question in that sense. There's two things that like I can share about that, and I think like we also have content on this, like up there. Essentially, our goal as a company is to make sure that like we can help companies be more efficient. Who are companies really? Like, hey, like the company is made of like, hey, individual people. In the end of the day, like we want to make your tasks easier. I wouldn't say like our role right now, like maybe as individuals will like just make whole departments or roles disappear, but we'll definitely like call them up to the sense to the idea of like, hey, we need to be more efficient and we need to provide more value. The roles that are traditionally more easy to automate, okay, and like right now we're doing this with AI, but this has been done like for a couple of years now. Okay, like as in like for the last 20 years, an industry has evolved based around software automation. The roles that are mostly subject to these automations are like manual roles. Essentially, anything that can be automated, anything that is manual, that is like deterministic, predictable. These things tend to fade out over time, and the idea is like, hey, we get to have these softwares necessarily like being an agent doing the work, not necessarily for you but with you. I'm not sure like if anything that we're doing out there, or any technology out there, like is right now can replace like a whole human being. Even like that's like probably one of the things like I'm happy to share about our product. One of the things that we do is that we try to understand like what are tasks that can be automated, what are tasks that cannot. And there's always a big chunk of these tasks that really cannot be automated. So like just to give you like a signal of assurance, we're not there to steal jobs, okay? Or like we're essentially trying to understand what are tasks that can be automated, really to make your job easier. I think that's probably a more accurate take to how I've seen our product being used. And there's actually more use cases around just around the automation circles.
So it's more about shifting the work tasks of an individual into more impactful work tasks.
Yeah, definitely. Like, so let's say like I'm sure like you have to do maybe in my job I have to do a lot of reach outs. Like let's talk about CVs, right? I think everybody wants to know more about how do we review CVs. It's a very human process. Yeah, there's a lot of companies out there that propose to automate this step in the hiring process. So far we have not seen like any really good results here, or something that I will trust to review CVs for me. Okay, like as in like not as in fully automated and not supervised or assisted by myself in any way. How I'll love to use or get a tool is like, hey, can it automate just my messages, reach out, comments. There are some tools that already are doing this, like, but they don't necessarily leverage AI to do this. What we're doing is probably a bit different in a way that what AI allows us to do is really understand how the user is working, what is the fundamental nature of the tasks themselves.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we will move on into your recruitment process soon. I have a couple of questions here. About
definitely.
Bring in the other questions as well. So
yeah. So essentially, like just to elaborate on our product, like really, so I can demystify like, hey, what are we actually automating, how we're doing it. Essentially, the main pain point that our clients face is, let's say like we're working in a big organization. There's always a lot of teams, sometimes not as efficient as they might otherwise be. This is often coming from ICs like themselves, okay, from the workers. Oh, I have a lot of repetitive tasks that I need to do. It's boring. It's stressful. It's same old. What are the way like we work is that we have a desktop agent that essentially it gets installed on user machines. Essentially, this records user activity. Essentially, takes screenshots of the user, not of the user, of their desktop. It understands like, hey, are we filling out an invoice? Are we sending out an email? Can we predict the next step? Is this something that it's deterministic? Is it repeatable over time, over different teams? What are the common patterns here? Okay. And then the next step in our process is really like, from all the data that we collect, really try to give the client, hey, like, look, these are the tasks that your team is working with. Essentially, we generate a process map that tells them all this information. We tell them like, hey, these are the things that can be automated. This is the ROI. Okay, if you are to automate it, this is how much what you're potentially gaining here. This is what cannot be automated. Okay, like you always need a human, either by the complexity of the task, either by the nature of the work. Okay, let's say it's designing something. Okay, it's a creative job. There are AI tools that are doing it. Okay, but from requirements to AI, like in a fast-paced enterprise or like a startup, the way to get there is still going to be very complex. Our value is really to provide value at the employee level, essentially, making sure that they can deploy automation that makes the boring parts of their work easier.
Get it. Cool. How do you recruit at Mimica?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so I think like I have a slide on this, and let's just talk about like first, before we go to the hiring process itself, let's just talk about principles. Okay, I think that's a starting point. So right now, what I'm about to say is like mostly focus on the tech. Okay, that's my expertise. We are looking to hire like for mostly all positions, including sales, marketing, operations. But tech is my niche. Essentially, the main mission that we have is like we want to hire the best talent in the world. The goal is like we look for talents with a really high technical bar, um, that have high standards, that can really understand the technology that they're working with at a very deeper level. They're good. They're essentially, very smart and capable engineers. Period. Okay. We're often not looking for somebody that like can just write code as a sense check. We're looking for architects. We're looking for builders. We're looking for what we call sometimes product engineers, people that can own the product, really understand like, hey, and be proactive about it. Hey, there's a pain point that we're having. Can I do something about it? Like, how many messages will it take me to get something done, and just get it done. Get the right people involved. Align the efforts of the people around them. Work with this in a very dynamic way, but do so we really with technical excellence. One of the priorities that we look for in candidates is making sure like, hey, their technical skills is very good, but their culture, the cultural elements, what we call the cultural fit, the way they collaborate with others, it's also like they're also very good at doing this. How they mentor, how they communicate, can they be clear in the way that they're going about explaining their thought processes, their concerns. Essentially, we divide our hiring processes, let's say, in between these two principles. One of them are, like I said, two of these stages are heavily focused on the technical elements. The other two are more focused on the cultural elements. Essentially, trying to answer like, hey, can we trust you? Are you fun to work with? Are you going to add value to the team? Will the collaboration with you work? We are working in like I kind of hinted earlier. It's a very greenfield product, and a greenfield industry. So can you navigate the ambiguity that oftentimes comes with this? Okay, in terms of defining requirements, defining products. A lot of this requires communication on your side, understanding of different possibilities that you can go with, and sometimes the ability to put everything together and deliver it. This is not an easy feat.
Yeah, it sounds like you need like some kind of natural curiosity.
Definitely.
Because this is always a tricky thing, but you're looking for a lot in a candidate, and this is what many companies are doing. I mean, you need to find a cultural match, of course. As a candidate, it might be hard to get to understand and know the culture before they meet you, I guess. But how should a candidate approach that challenge, like getting to know the company culture and maybe adapt a bit their behavior in the process to that? Do you have any ideas?
Definitely. Like I'll speak to our case, but also try to provide an advice, like just in general out there. Different companies share different things, or rather, different companies will share different levels of information about what's their culture. Some of them have this very much defined. Okay, I've been working primarily with tech companies. This is usually more standard. Like you need to define stuff and then you communicate it. And there are reasons behind it. Essentially, like a good company, or what I'll consider a good company that wants to be competitive on the market, they will define their culture. They will advertise it in their career page. They will communicate it, unless they have not gone through the hoops to get there. Maybe they're in a very early stage. Maybe they're 20, 30 people. They're still building this part of the process, and that's completely fair. Okay, it's a startup. Okay, I'm not saying like, hey, if you don't have this, like you're bad. Like please don't say this.
It's more about adapting to that as a candidate, I think.
Maybe two thoughts here, like just to finalize what I was about to say, like and getting there. a lot of companies will provide that information up front. A lot of them won't. Sometimes among the people, the companies that won't, they will still be open like to the questions, like from yourself. Okay, there's a lot of great questions you can ask about the culture. In the case like, hey, they're not sharing a lot about there. The more specific you can be like on the things that you really value, I think like, hey, the more beneficial the conversation is going to get. I get a lot of questions that say like, hey, what's your culture? And I'm like, hey, there's probably a lot that I can talk about my culture. Let's begin with principles. Um, let's But on the other side, like, if people are very much focusing like on learning, like you can tell them like, hey, how do you approach L&D here in the company? Okay, like what processes and steps do you have? What do you have in your roadmap for this? Do you have one even? um, Anything that like comes to your mind, like you can there is always the possibility you can articulate this into a question, then finding out more. A good way, like probably the best way out of all of these, like for you to find out like what's a company culture out there, even if the company is not actively sharing this information, go on LinkedIn, see who they hired, see what are they saying about themselves, see what are the previous companies that they work with. Let's say like you're applying to a company and all their or most of their employees, they come from Deloitte, big four companies. Okay, you can't, these companies are out there, like they're, what to expect from these companies. If they're all coming from startups, uh, different expectations. Look for their founders background. That will probably tell you the most, okay, out of all of these. Look for their interviews. Like there's companies like that. It's not like companies are not an island. Maybe you'll hear me repeat this like a few times over the call. There's always more information that you can find out about them, like basically just trying to understand like, hey, who works for them, where have they been, what are their previous experiences, what are they sharing out there. Right now, like we have access to a lot more information than usually we otherwise wouldn't. So that will like be my take on Mimica. We're trying to simplify this process for candidates. Like we're trying to put um, content out there, like we're preparing it. Like I said, like maybe we have not gone through, we have not fully realized our whole vision for what we want to share. But that's on the roadmap, that's coming. This slide that you're just seeing, like it's actually coming from a deck that like we just finished a couple of weeks ago. Every time that's like I'm talking to a candidate, I'm sending this, they understand what's the expectations, and there's more content on that what we shared with interviews, like with the team members. Essentially, like it's also in your company's interest to do this, okay? Because like if I'm in a startup world and I want people to be very very dynamic, I'm usually going to find a lot of like-minded people coming from the startup world. They know the challenges of like pivoting products, pivoting directions. Oftentimes, if people come from very corporate worlds, like they might get used to the idea of like, hey, everything is on rails. I need to follow this path. Deviating from this path is bad. Is going to be negatively. There's a negative feedback associated with it. Oftentimes, in startups, that's the case. Like, hey, you're expected to go outside of like your lane. There's a problem, raise it. We tend to be very much more towards the startup world, okay, because of the nature and the stage that we're in right now. We're in the process of building a culture, building products, building a company. There will be problems, there will be challenges. We expect you to like, hey, own them, identify them, fix them, be optimal about it. The opposite, we are really not interested in, is like, hey, it's there's a problem, not on me, bye.
And
We cannot build a successful company this way.
and showcase that throughout the recruitment process, so to say, in the resume, in the process. I will just switch topic a bit. Two questions. We have a question from Chesor. So do you see Mimica entering the African market, or do you have any employees currently in Africa?
I don't think so. We have employees in the Middle East, in Dubai. We are open to hiring across different time zones. Okay, So if you are in an African country, if you are within roughly European time zones, we want to hear from you. Okay, hey, just apply. If you're probably like in Asia, Australia, time zone is going to be difficult for us. Maybe there are ways to make it work. Right now, like our priorities have been like hiring mostly in Europe and the Americas. In Europe, as in like European time zones.
Yeah, so time zones is maybe a bit more important than specific country, because as you told me before, that you're using external like payroll services, so you can basically employ people.
Yeah, that's the case.
Most countries. Thanks for that. And we have a question from Lisa as well. And feel free to share if you have any other questions. Yeah, this is a really good question, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really worth joining a talent pool if there are no like active roles that match?
I was personally never successful with this, to be honest. I've built talent pools in the past. Maybe I should rephrase what I said. As a candidate, I was never successful. In this case, I also work sometimes in or I applied to markets where like maybe there's more competition out there. I've hired from talent pools in the past, but the way I've built those talent pools have been like through people who maybe we were talking to, maybe they were runner-ups against other candidates that we hired. They were still very valid. Okay, maybe somebody else was better, but like because when we have one position, we can only hire for one role at the time. And what I usually end up doing in those scenarios is essentially, like going back to that talent pool that I built and see like, hey, so who is here that we've talked to, that we kind of agreed to stay in touch with, that we kind of felt like, hey, there was a strong match. We just couldn't make it happen at the time. Not gonna lie, the perspectives like right there. With talent pools, general talent pools, maybe I'm thinking more about like these companies that will have like a job called talent pool. Hey, send me your CV. In case we have an opening, we'll reach out to you. I think the perspectives of getting a role that way are very low.
Yeah.
Mostly if we consider that if I receive just like 1,000 applications in 1 week for one role, I cannot imagine that number being any way lower for a talent pool role.
So it sounds just being in a dead talent pool where you rely on the employer that they will contact you. Don't do that. But maybe it's more about getting in touch and connecting with people at the company and staying in touch.
Definitely,
to me,
like
more a relationship-based kind of talent pool.
Yeah. Oftentimes, like so maybe I'm also like trying to give Lisa like just a more accurate representation of how I'm doing it right now and how I've been doing it before. Oftentimes, like we look for different things in candidates. Sometimes it's seniority. Sometimes there's going to come maybe a really strong candidate is going to apply to us, but the role is not open yet. We are going to have a role maybe for that person soon, but it's not right the time to hire for that role. In those cases, I if I found like the profile is a potential fit, I'll write them and say like, hey, your profile is very relevant for us. Okay, for this position we're looking for X, but we're actually opening this position like sometime this quarter. Are you okay if I keep you in mind? And this way, like the way I try to approach is like I want to build a relationship here, okay, with a candidate. The way I think about it is like my role is to build relationships. Sometimes it's not a fit. It's a yes. It's a no for now, but maybe it's a yes later. It's never think about it from a perspective of, hey, I applied, they rejected me, the process ended. Okay, it's pretty much the opposite. At least like how in tech and how I've been approaching it, and keep in mind like maybe other recruiters will have different approaches. I want to be able, if you're good, if you have value to bring to the table, I want to be comfortable and I want to have the open door to like just reach out to you and say like, hey, we're ready to hire, or I have this role for you. Can we chat? And like we follow up the process from there.
Thanks. And so this has been being repeated in our previous sessions as well. So I think it's a lot about never estimating the relationship you build during recruitment processes. Because, but also adding to that, I think it's smart that you as a candidate own the follow-up and don't wait for the recruiter or the hiring managers or the companies in general to get in touch with you. So if let's say Pedro says that, okay, we have a role coming up in Q3, set a calendar reminder of that and get in touch with Pedro.
That's how I do it, actually. Like that's in those cases. Yeah, because it goes both ways. Sometimes candidates, I receive applications, but I also source candidates. This means I will approach candidates on the market that maybe they're doing something that's interesting, and I want to have a chat with them. And they'll say like, hey, right now I'm actually not looking for a job or actively looking. I plan on doing so 6 months or 1 year from now. That's a way better approach. That's a way better thing to say than, let's say, like, hey, no, don't reach out to me again. Be honest about your timeline, or even the way you're approaching it. Like, hey, maybe not this role, not the industry, but like, hey, happy to hear from you. Like, if there's anything else out there that maybe matches this, be honest about what you want. I think that has been like an approach that I did, and in those cases, like I often I just book a calendar event saying like, hey, reach out to Fredrik, and maybe I'll forget about it like three or 6 months down the line, but I'll have the calendar event to remind me.
Yeah, structure is good. Time flies. I think we will move on for some extra minutes as well. I think it's fine for you as well, Pedro.
All good.
Just a couple of quick practical questions. Okay, so you're hiring remotely, and I guess it might be a challenge to stand out with a resume while applying. Do you have any practical advice there?
Yeah, I do. Let's jump to it. I'll probably have some more practical advice, but like maybe to sum up, I came up with this framework. Maybe we'll not have like enough time to go into these details, but essentially, the biggest mistake that I see candidates doing out there is like, I don't see or read a good value proposition. I'll just like to elaborate on what this means. Okay, essentially, and like maybe people can just take this slide and maybe go into a bit more details on their own. But I also give a concrete example here. The main pain point that I often feel when I'm interviewing candidates is that, okay, maybe they have good skills to share, but I'm working with an asymmetry of information. Okay, I have 30 minutes or 45 minutes to jump on a call with you. Maybe I have a couple of seconds to minutes to review your CV. This is too little to get a really good sense as to what you as a candidate are, what the value that you bring to the table. Anything that you can do that can simplify the process for me, that's what I'm looking for. Essentially, what is a value proposition is like a statement or some preparation on your side on how you frame it that can quickly address like, hey, I'm hiring for a certain need. Okay, maybe I'm opening a new team for a new product. Maybe I'm expanding a current team. Maybe our team is quickly growing. How do I know that your previous experiences prepared you for what I'm looking for? And what is the proof and the results that you bring with you that can basically tell me like, hey, yes, like I'm ready to talk to you. The conversation excites me. I'm excited about the possibilities that we can, or the things that we can do together. Oftentimes, people will index a lot on their skills and previous responsibilities and not make the connection between like, hey, what is it I'm looking for? Okay, so I just put together like this quick framework just to exemplify this. Okay, like, hey, first do your research. What's the company type? Okay, different companies look for different things. What's their need? What I just told you. How can you solve it? Okay, are you a developer? Okay, what is that you've accomplished over your career, and are you ready to do? Really, what are your results? Did your previous efforts resulted in more sales for the team? It resulted in a new product launch. What was the impact and difference that you made over your career? And most importantly, like, hey, bring everything together. People can prepare pitches and like that's fine. um, I think my most practical advice is do some formula of this on your CV. There are other models out there on the web that can clearly show me like, hey, who you are, where you're coming from, your results.
I guess a big challenge here might both be to know where to expose this. Should you expose this on a personal message? Should you expose it like on your cover letter, if cover letters are like applicable? What do you think? Like, where would you place your so-called value proposition?
Everywhere where your presence is on where I can find it. Your CVs will be one. Cover letter. It has not played a big part in the roles that I've hired for. They've mostly been very technical. I'll probably focus more on your GitHub if than a cover letter in that sense. But for non-technical roles, more enterprise, more like maybe more traditional companies, maybe that will make a difference. Okay.
Basically showcasing your value proposition everywhere.
Let's say like your value proposition, and that's a bit my case. It's like being proactive. I'm very proactive in the job that I'm doing. I need to I work in very fast-paced startups. People expect me to solve problems that they don't even know, like their problems. I advertise this everywhere I can, like on my CV, on my LinkedIn. When I was job searching, I would proactively reach out messages to candidates, not to potentially employers. Really things that I love to do for them. This speaks to proactivity, literally, if your value is proactive and you're being proactive, you're being consistent and coherent here. What you definitely shouldn't do is say something on your CV. I go to your LinkedIn, I don't really see a match there. Okay. I go to your LinkedIn, you want to work with Python and you want to go to machine learning, but then I read your CV and you want to be a web developer for life. Something's not right here. Okay. Please be consistent.
That's actually a really good insight, because I've also been reading quite a lot of applications. But what you do after reading the application or the resume is that you look at their online presence. You Google the person, you look at the LinkedIn profile, and you want to find a red thread, so to say, in the profile, right? So. But just the last short question, short answer. How important would it be to tailor your value proposition per company? It's quite time demanding, but would you say it's a smart idea, or is it better to maybe pinpoint, based on your value proposition, pinpoint a couple of companies to approach?
It will depend on the role that you apply for. It will depend on the company stage as well. I'd say the way I approach it is, if I'm applying to a company that I really like and resonate, which is what you should be doing, most exclusively, you should definitely tailor it. You want to make the job easier for the other person. I tailored my CV to Mimica, being open here, not in the sense of making anything up, but highlighting things that I did that maybe I feel are relevant, working for the same industries, working for the same let's say positioning companies, in this case Series A startups, really giving them this is probably the most important takeaway that I love to share, where recruiters are working primarily and interviewers are working primarily with signals. Okay. We are not mind readers. Okay. We are not forecasting, oh, this person said this why it must be X. Okay. We're getting signals from candidates. If you give me signals, you understand my world, you understand my pain points, you can solve my needs. That's what I want to see. that makes it easier for me to move somebody with. If
So
I'm
you're
reviewing
connecting
candidates, yeah.
dots. That's just to clarify that, because you were discussing that don't change thing in the resume, so be consistent in different channels, career profiles all around, but you can still highlight and clarify things that might be worth clarifying on the resume, for example. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Bold
definitely.
Series A, you are
Yeah.
joining a Series A company. So.
Correct. Yeah. Like, if maybe I often have to find this like through calling people, or like people mention like during an interview, like, hey, I work for a Series A company, like, or their work got them like a funding round. This was not on their CV, and I was like, dude, write this. Like, this should be like your number
You need
one.
to bring that up. Yeah.
Like,
because you might filter out a really good candidate if they don't show the most relevant thing.
Yeah,
I think we have an interesting case here that might be relevant based on this. So HiCareer, co-founded a product-driven startup, and now it's time to enter the professional world again as a product manager.
Well,
I mean, for a company like Mimica, it might be quite a good thing.
I have good news to share. Like, I was going over like some data points. Like, we realized like a lot of our engineers, a significant part, have founded their own companies. We hired people that they had their company, like they either sold it or didn't work out. They're now looking for a new role. That's something we value. Okay, startups will generally value this. Be clear on your career, or let's say in your statements, like as an advice, what is that you're looking for. The concern with somebody that maybe has been a serial entrepreneur is like they're just basically paying their debts so that they can move on to the next
So
challenge.
it might be a short-term thing for them.
Yeah, and like we want to have a clear signal that this is what you want to do. Like, you want this to be like the next stage of your career. Don't basically use us as a salary, because like you likely won't be hired. Okay, like we'll have a good process to screen those people. Definitely, we will never exclude somebody that maybe they've hired funding their own company. Now they're looking at the market. That will be like a strong point for us.
So do you? So HiCareer is bringing up also that the startup ultimately didn't make it. Is that something you care about?
In a way, like of course, like, hey, not everybody, not like we know the data around startups is like 99% of initiatives and startups will fail. Like that's everybody. This is out there. We know it. It matters most like what skills did you learn from it? What are the lessons that you learn with? I don't want to maybe give too much away, okay, like from our hiring processes, but we going over into this topic, okay. Essentially, can you learn from your mistakes, basically? Where did you learn from your mistakes? Maybe HiCareer has a story as to what didn't work, what you will have done different, and then really self-reflect and understand, like, hey, what value can you bring to the table at this point in your career?
So and I've been recruiting quite a lot for startups and scale up, and I would say that I really like founders, co-founders. It's not like people must have started a company and get the startup mentality from there, but I think if you put time to reflect after the journey and translate that into, okay, how can I use all my learnings and new skills in a more professional context, or like when getting employed, I think it might be a really like good thing. But it's more about taking some time to like a clarity break to reflect and then translate that into application.
Definitely. Like maybe very quickly, you can, like, I've built solutions and projects, like, and I've been very mostly like independent, most like never been like a successful entrepreneur in that sense, but a lot of my learnings and lessons came from working on projects that were very highly complex. even if they didn't succeed. Because like you're exposed to sales, you're exposed to product, you're exposed to logistics, you're exposed to operations, you're exposed to like a systemic view of how your solution tries to work, and then trying to interface this with the market, which is very unpredictable, and there's research involved. And in just like in the space of like 5 seconds, I told you like maybe 10 or 20 skills that are needed to be successful in all of those, and maybe you learn from a lot of these, and this is all value you can bring to your next role. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we have time to go into like the next slide. Maybe that will speak a bit to what we're talking about.
You can show it, and but I will wrap this up in very soon. But yeah,
maybe like as a takeaway. Okay, like I was putting this when I was putting like these slides together, I was trying to think like, hey, there's people in many different situations. One of them is I know what I want and I know what I'm looking for. Maybe my challenge is just putting everything together and communicating this. Maybe I don't know what I want, and now my challenge is try to find out what's that the case. Or maybe there is what I've been doing up until now has not worked. So it's like, okay, what is not working? Okay, and it really starts, like from what we're discussing, like with always not maybe not always, but from time to time, do this self-discovery process, trying to understand, okay, what is your passion, what you're good at, what is that your need right now in your career. Is it mentorship? Is it guidance? Okay, where can you find this? Maybe some people will look for mentorship and leadership in companies, and maybe they can even find outside of them. Okay, maybe outside of it, in support groups, like in communities. And if you try to separate like your needs, understand, okay, how can, essentially it's called separation of concerns. If you try to understand, like build a framework for yourself on how can you make your life better, you can likely get to like way more actionable results. Okay, and what I project here is essentially that process. Like, hey, try to identify like what is keeping you from maybe like getting to the next stage. Is it that you're just sending like a lot of CVs and maybe there's not a clear value proposition there? Are you targeting the wrong companies? Is it maybe like you're not sending 1,000 CVs a week, but you're sending one every couple of months, for whatever reason? Okay, and how can you turn that, like, hey, how can you turn that around? Okay, clearly it's not going to be like one CV like a week. If you look at the statistics that are out there, that's likely going to move the needle for you. And essentially, like, yeah, keep building yourself up. That's probably like my best advice.
Yeah, and I guess that of course job seeking is a numbers game partly, but you might need to tweak how much time you spend on self-discovery instead of just like applying and applying and applying for every kind of job. So yeah, we've been into this in the previous sessions as well. I think it's really a common thread here.
There's also some good questions. I'm not sure if you have the time to cover.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a question from Fiona here that is, it's a really interesting question, and maybe it comes back to this this process as well. So what do you say about having a gap in the resume?
It's fair. Okay, you should apply. Your concern is fair. I've hired a lot of CVs with not a lot of CVs. Sorry, way bad wording. I've hired a lot of candidates with gaps in their CVs. They acknowledge their CV, their gaps. Sometimes we didn't got the chance to go into that. We also try to understand definitely like why did people leave their jobs. Okay, that's important. Sometimes it's personal reasons, like it can be sickness, it can be illness. You might feel like it might not be too relevant, or you're not comfortable enough with sharing it. Clarifying that if you're asked will be fair, especially with the last 3 years of job market with COVID. There is a lot of job like a lot of gappers. Okay, if your previous years of experience are solid in the sense like maybe they're very consistent, this shouldn't be something that you should worry about. Challenge for you, like maybe state what you've been doing during that time. Hey, are you learning? Were you learning? Like, were you doing courses? Were you keeping yourself active in some way? What were your responsibilities? Even taking care of family members or doing going over so any personal situation that's challenging or complex will speak about who you are as a person. Okay. Yeah, that's probably like my best advice for gappers, or not gappers, or if people have some career gaps.
Yeah, basically, yeah. As I've been recruiting quite a lot for startups as well. I would say that I like, or maybe prefer, the more messy profiles, or the profiles with kind of like not stereotypical experiences. So if you've jumped between many jobs, or if you have a gap in your resume, I think it all comes down to transparency and daring to be transparent about what you have been doing. You don't need to say the exact things, but I think that the more you dare to be transparent to the potential employer, the more trust you will build to them, and that might be actually a positive thing, because I can see that many people are trying to hide gaps, and they don't want to talk about it, but I see it, so then I get more skeptical actually. So
that's like, that's a strong signal. If somebody tells me like, hey, like I had to maybe quit my role because I need to take care of kids, or like some parents, man, like that's very brave. Like that takes guts. Like you're prioritizing maybe your family over your personal situation. That speaks to you.
Yeah. Also, last thing to Fiona and others that have these gaps, I think it's important to understand that every employer is not for you. So if they disqualify you based on that, it's the wrong employer to join. So
definitely, like, I think you put it very nicely. Okay, like,
I have 1.5 more questions, and then we'll just summarize. So thanks a lot, Pedro, for bringing all of these up.
Time flies. Yeah, I wish I could be more concise. Maybe. It's on me to learn this lesson.
Let's go for 3 hours next time.
Let's do it.
But Pedro, if you would. Just the last thing about remote interviews. Are there any small mindset shifts or personal touches that can make a big difference in remote interviews?
Definitely. Make sure like you're prepared to have a call. I think we were talking about before this call, right? I had people showing up on the call while they were at the bar with loud music playing in the background. I had a candidate who got on a call, an interview with me, while driving in a car. Okay, that's probably the biggest red flag. Okay, if you kill or have an accident with while you're driving and having an interview, okay, please don't do that. There's make sure you're in a quiet room, it's nicely lit. Okay, you don't need to have the best camera in the world. Make sure your connection works. Make sure your microphone is clear. You can test this out ahead of time. That's one just signal that, hey, at least you take care of the basics. There's possibly more to it than we can go into it. Definitely, I know we have we have some ideas on this, right? But essentially is do try to understand on the company side, hey, how can they hire you? Maybe you're in a different country. We provide this information ahead of time, in our case. Try to understand, hey, how's it like working remotely for that company? Some companies favor async, okay? Other favor sync, as in even if you're working remotely, you're expected hey, to be on call or be ready to have calls. Understand how do companies do remote, okay? They'll often have their policies if they are in that stage where they're very organized and communicative about what they're doing. If not, they will have this information. This information will exist in some form on the other one. It's possible on you, hey, to just
summarizing this a bit, it's a lot about staying proactive, both regarding the setting for the meeting, but also regarding what questions you might need to ask to the recruiter or the one in the intro call, because I guess that it's quite a good opportunity to get to understand if asynchronous work is how this remote work company are doing it, or if there are other traits that should be more relevant to look into. So thanks a lot, Pedro. I think we can speak for hours.
Yeah, we always enjoy our time together.
Yeah, hopefully I can bring you in for another session or bring in for you lots of other knowledge. But I'm super thankful that you could join us. And just last question: how can people reach out to you?
Definitely, you can find me on LinkedIn, Pedro Reis Silva. Okay, maybe I'll just bring my first slide up. Pedro Reis Silva Mimica. That'll be easier to find. Or PPR Silva. Okay, that's like my username. Made out of my initials. Be ready to find them there.
Amazing. Pedro, thanks a lot, and enjoy the day in Porto. And see you soon again.
Fredrik, yeah, thank you for having me. Like, it was a pleasure as always.
And thanks to all of you that have been staying with us here. And we have recorded this session, so it will be in our YouTube channel as well. So yeah, thanks a lot, and stay tuned because more sessions are coming up. Right. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.